Hey yo, what's good everyone? Twisted here with Open Sorcery, and today I want to go ahead and talk about silence, solitude, and stillness. And this one in particular, I can say comes off the heels of both Devi and I, as well as a few others, going ahead and delving into the book Stillness Speaks by Eckhart Tolle. Now, granted, when it comes to these particular concepts that are in the book, I will say that is not necessarily something that is brand new or like shockingly revelatory for me. And I can say also on the behalf of Devi as well, because we were discussing this when we first started reading it several days ago, but that itself serves as a very good reminder of the benefits of allowing yourself to have a quiet space. Be the essence, the benefits of being alone. You don't necessarily have to, feel lonely when you're alone. At times, very much so, when, you have a hectic life going on, say people are working a 9 to 5, or those in school, whether they're children or they're, older, or, running errands, going to the grocery store, social events, all these sorts of things. It can be rather hectic. It can take quite a bit of energy. And, we at times try to go ahead and be so busy that we of ourselves don't recognize that, we need to pump the brakes and allow ourselves to have moments of silence, moments of being alone, solitude, allowing us to be still as opposed to perpetually in motion. Now, change is the only constant, and the cells within our body, all these things are continually in perpetual sort of a vibratory status. They're continually oscillating and moving around, but relative stillness in regards to our manner of perception. These things that, the continual motion is happening on such a microscopic or a microcosmic level that we're not really detecting it all too much. Granted, nothing is either one polarity or the other. It's always oscillating, going between said poles, but in of itself, relative to our experience in this physical body and, the scope of it that we're used to, yes, stillness and that sort. Now, going ahead and talking about that sort of thing of the book, right? I'll go ahead and start off by, aside from what I just talked about, getting into the book itself and giving it like a little bit of a summary, and that's, pretty much this right here is, it follows the KISS model that, I myself say quite a bit within my own personal life, and may have mentioned before previously on, here in different, talks and such, but the KISS model, KISS, which is an acronym for Keep It Simple, Stupid. So finding that, simplicity in of itself happens to go ahead and work efficiently and work best in many sorts of cases. And this book definitely follows that quite a bit, as well as it's at least based on what, Eckhart Tolle was going ahead and, trying to base it off of what he was trying to aim for in writing the book back in 2003, 2004, somewhere in the mid to early 2000s is when it was published. He was trying to go ahead and pretty much do his own version of a Hindu, Buddhist, Eastern sort of sutra, and, that is just one means of how, one means of storytelling, one means of trying to relay a concept in a simple, but, you could say sometimes a bit repetitive form of like restating the same thing over and over again, but still keeping to the short, sweet, simple, and to the point model where there isn't too much over elaboration. it's kind of walking a fine line in that sort of sense, and that, you know, it is a shorter sort of text, but it in of itself is not necessarily like, it's definitely not a textbook, and it gets, you know, to those sort of points, but it's not as if it's completely just like one-dimensional. It covers a couple different, like, you know, areas of things and how they interrelate. You know, pretty much if you've read Eckhart Tolle before, common themes of the ego, being present, you know, and aware of your surroundings, you know, and trying to go ahead and tap into who you are in the core of yourself, as opposed to just, you know, oh, hey, look, I am, you know, in my case, I'm twisted, you know, and nothing more, nothing less. All I am is just this persona, and there's nothing greater than myself. There's nothing internally to delve deep in or search for, like trying to find that true self within you. Whether you want to say it's the higher self, also alternatively named the Holy Guardian Angel or the Holy Daemon, or you could say, you know, diving into one individual's, you know, subconscious, or, you know, the superconscious, or, you know, the universe, or God, or source, or, you know, whatever sort of levels, whatever sort of macrocosmic sort of levels may be, or whatever terminology that works best for you. And you know, like, I will say that when it comes to Eckhart Tolle, I have not actually read the written works of Alan Watts up to this point, but these sorts of concepts when it comes to being alone and allowing for silence of the mind, you know, having solitude, being still, very much in the realm of Alan Watts. For those who have gone ahead and checked out his sort of talks, you know, there's plenty of recordings of him on YouTube where people make clips of stuff he's done, and a lot of times you'll probably hear like that ambient new agey sort of music under it. But yes, there is, you know, quite a bit of material out there where you can go ahead and audibly listen to what he has to say on the subject. And he also has written works as well, if you're, you know, more so in wanting to read that. But, you know, I say Alan Watts is definitely a good resource for that sort of, you know, this sort of concept that we're discussing at present. And, you know, in terms of being presence and kind of like the reason why, you know, people like Eckhart Tolle and, you know, Alan Watts go ahead and recommend that you quiet the mind and you have, you know, your alone time, your solitude, and that you go ahead and be still and allow yourself to not necessarily be caught up in perpetual motion, get caught up in, you know, like being like, oh, I have to do this, that, and the other thing, is, you know, for the sake of presence, being in the now, being aware of your surroundings. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and make a callback to the presence and the power of now talk that, you know, Devi and I had with Bodhizen, you know, however, you know, long ago it was, and however long it shall precede this particular talk in the actual release order of things. But yes, you know, we covered that quite a bit in that particular discussion. But moving forward to other points I want to get to about, you know, silence and, you know, stillness, solitude, you know, allowing yourself to be alone. And once again, you don't necessarily have to be lonely by being alone. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't necessarily recognize, you know, within themselves. Like, for introverts, it's kind of more so of a natural thing to say extroverts, because we're more so looking to have smaller, like, sizes of interactions, as opposed to those who are extroverts, who are, like, wanting to be more so social. They want to be in a larger setting a lot of times, interact with many people, you know, have that continual interaction of exchanging energies, to put it in a spiritual context, or just, you know, hanging out with people and all that. But, you know, even if we, introverts have a little more so easier, there still is that sort of difficulty within modern life, because the means of communication, the means of transportation, allow for us to go at a quicker pace than maybe you could say previous generations were able to, or at least, and granted, we like to think of ourselves more so advanced and going at a more so faster pace and all these sorts of things, but truth of the matter is just more so that we have awareness and exposure to things going on in the world at large, right? And that, truth be told, these sorts of things of keeping busy and going ahead and distracting yourself, by committing actions is nothing that's new at all, and has been going on for quite some time throughout human history and all of that, and I believe I may have mentioned it in the Presence and the Power of Now conversation, but this particular sort of talk, yeah, I remember now, I actually did, but this sort of thing of people keeping themselves busy to the point where they don't make time for reflection and introspection and all that sort of thing. This is something that Swami Prabhupada, I believe it was in the 70s or the 80s, he was having a talk with someone, I believe it was in the morning time in a garden or something like that. There's a transcript online, which I believe I may have gone ahead and included in the description of that Presence and Power Now talk, but I also will, even if I didn't, I will include it in this one. And going ahead and where he talks about the 4 types of people, and generally speaking, it's in no particular order. It is those who are the lazy fools, the lazy intelligent, the busy fools, and the busy intelligent. And I definitely did it in no particular order, because the ones who are considered lazy are actually more so higher up on this hierarchy, of what they should be doing, who are the higher value sort of individuals, or they have their priorities straight. And I'm not doing the best job of explaining this at present, but I think I did a better job over in the other video. But to go ahead and give a summary of that sort of concept, those who are busy fools, they keep themselves very much occupied with things of the world. I have to do this job, I have to travel, I have to go ahead and fill my tank up with gas, I gotta go to the grocery store, I gotta, do this, that, or the third with kids or family or all that sort of thing. They don't allow themselves time for spiritual reflection, insight, prayer, in a magical sort of sense, invoking or doing alchemy or, whatever your particular practices or interests may be, or things that enrich you as an individual. I will say that I definitely put creative sort of ventures into the spiritual category in of itself, and those being enriching. The things that give you purpose, that don't necessarily take too much effort. So those who are busy, the busy fools and the busy intelligent, their priorities aren't necessarily the best based on Swami Prabhupada's sort of, I'm trying to think of a particular term, assessment. And, when it comes to the lazy fools and the lazy intelligent, those individuals, they make time for it. They have simplified everything. So keeping with the KISS model of keep it simple, stupid, they have simplified things within their lives to go ahead and make room for the ability to reflect, to have introspection, to meditate if that's your particular sort of practice. Whatever it may be, to go ahead and tune into oneself. And, without going ahead and continually sounding like a broken record on that one, like I said, discuss it in the other video, as well as I will provide a link to a transcript on Krishna.com, so you can go ahead and read it from the horse's mouth himself. Not to say Swami Prabhupada was a horse, but you get the analogy, you get what I mean. Now, earlier on I mentioned that Eckhart Tolle went ahead and tried to write his book Stillness Speaks in the manner of a Hindu or a Buddhist or an Eastern sutra. And I will say that a lot of times, those sutras, in reading several myself, along with other things such as, Zen Buddhist koans, or different, Eastern parables, or even, Western parables, those done by Jesus Christ, Yeshua ben Yosef, Isa, many different names and attributions across the Abrahamic religions, but, they happen to go ahead and convey the, deeper messages and all that, and it takes one, whether it's reading any of those sorts of things, or other, reading materials as well, you have to have the skill of reading in between the lines to grasp what it is. Like the pauses in between the words, you could say, look beyond the words that are being said, and that kind of being the key of how you ascertain what is truly being conveyed in of itself. A lot of times it can be simple on its face as well, but it's also trying to point you in a particular manner. Not just the reading or the hearing of something, but trying to point it so you can have more so of a experiential sort of understanding. And that's something I think I forgot to touch upon at the beginning of this, but I'll mention it now, and I'll try to remember to close out me talking about the subject with this as well, is that as much as I can go ahead and elaborate on this sort of thing of, silence and, having solitude, being still, that it is more so an experiential sort of thing that you have to go ahead and experience for oneself to actually truly comprehend what it is that's being conveyed. And granted, you can say that for a lot of things about subjects that are talked about, with the open sorcery, and, I guess, across the sphere of the, spiritual, magical, occult, whatever sort of space of the internet or YouTube or, wherever you may happen to find this sort of, conversation being had, whether it's, a dialogue or a monologue in this case, and me talking alone. But yes, it is definitely supposed to point you to experience, having your own experiences, not taking it on someone else's word, and not having expectations that, I'm going to have the same experience as someone else, and getting caught up in that, because truth be told, that can go ahead and make it to where you in of yourself can be let down and disappointed because you're caught up in those sorts of, someone said that they experienced it like this, and you get a preconceived notion, then you get disappointed, and since we were talking about sutras and, Buddhist sort of sutras and Zen Buddhist koans and all that, I will take a moment to go ahead and talk about the principle of, how Buddhists view desire as the source of all suffering. And I won't really get too deeply into that or go down that particular, rabbit hole, at least at this present moment. But, there's plenty of commentary out there on that, and at some point I may further elaborate on it, but I don't want to get too much off track. So, when it comes to different sutras and koans and parables, I will go ahead and say that reading in between the lines definitely is how you should approach it. And that, like I said, goes for any sort of text, including the Bible as a whole, if you're talking about not just Christ's words within the New Testament, but also across the whole entire book, that was, I guess I'll go ahead and mention, Selected and all that sort of thing. Not all the works of, detailing Christ or other biblical Abrahamic sort of figures, but I'll mention that, for those who didn't know, just a little bit of a bonus thing, that in 325 AD, the Bible, and how many books were in it and all that, for the core pieces of it, was selected at the Council of Nicaea, where not only they discussed that, but also other core tenets of at least the Roman Catholic Church, or at least what evolved into it as the main sort of body of things, as well as the Nicene Creed, as well, if you are in fact familiar with that. But in terms of, not to go off, tongue-tied, not to go off a detour of that a bit too much, let us go ahead and talk about, I have a couple koans here as examples. So, sutras, koans, parables, all these sort of things. The whole idea of reading between the lines. I figured I'd go ahead and grab a couple to go ahead and share. And, since we're talking about silence and solitude and stillness and looking inward towards yourself and all these sorts of things, I figured I'd go, well, granted, the source I'm using for these is ashitakim.com. I know for sure I will definitely provide a link for that one, for, where you can find all these two koans I'm about to use as examples, and many other koans, 101. Now, granted, there's more than 101 koans in existence, but usually is books that are published, and a lot of them that usually tend to be like, oh yes, 101 koans or what have you. But I figured it'd be appropriate to go ahead and find the ones that are labeled or at least titled as having to do with being silent or finding out about silence and all that sort of thing. This one, the first one, is a little bit more so, I guess, topic appropriate in what I'm trying to get across. And the other one is also in that realm, but it has a little bit of a different message. But I think both of them are pretty good in whatever points they try to convey. So, listen into my reciting of them and all that. They're not too long. And just try to figure out what they happen to mean. And, if you're going to that particular website, I'll tell you what numbers they are so you can find it if you wish to read it yourself. And they're definitely, whether it's a sutra or a koan or a parable or something like that, even if you don't get it the first time right away, or even if, you do, definitely the sorts of things to go ahead and revisit, continually, again and again, over time, to get a deeper understanding, and serve as reminders, which I will make the mention of is why Eckhart Tolle wrote Stillness Speaks in the manner in which he did, because he wanted it to have a high replay value, or pick it up or put it down whenever you want. You don't have to read through it in one go and try to ascertain everything. You don't have to go ahead and try to be oh yes, I read it once and that's it, I get it completely. Short, sweet, to the point, for the sake of having high replay value and all of that. But so this one, at least based on the websites that I'm bringing, is number 71, Learning to be Silent. The pupils of the Tendai school used to study meditation before Zen entered Japan. 4 of them, who were intimate friends, promised one another to observe 7 days of silence. On the first day, all were silent. Their meditation had begun auspiciously. But when night came and the oil lamps were growing dim, one of the pupils could not help exclaiming to a servant, "Fix those lamps." The second pupil was surprised to hear the first one talk. "We are not supposed to say a word," he remarked. "You two are stupid. Why did you talk?" asked the third. "I am the only one who has not talked," concluded the fourth pupil. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and try to say what the underlying thing about it was. You go ahead and ponder it for yourself. And let me go ahead and grab the other one as well to go ahead and state it. And this is based on the site's numbering. Number 100, the Silent Temple. Shoichi was a one-eyed teacher of Zen, sparkling with enlightenment. He taught his disciples in Tofuku Temple. Day and night, the whole temple stood in silence. There was no sound at all. Even the reciting of sutras was abolished by a teacher. His pupils had nothing to do but meditate. When the master passed away, an old neighbor heard the ringing of bells and the recitation of sutras. She then knew Shoichi had gone. And I'll let you go ahead and ponder on that one as well. Chew on it. Once again, there will be a link for you to go ahead and check it out yourself. But, in terms of that right there, right? So, as was mentioned within the second one, right? Well, actually, both of them. That, pretty much being silent and meditating, all that sort of thing, right? Meditation in of itself is a very good way of tapping into that which, resides within us. And on the topic of meditation, this is another sort of, callback to the meditation video, which will also be coming out before this one, in which, Devi and I discussed with Light, as well as our friend Dunster, that, all different things about meditation as a practice, so go check that out for more detail. But as Alan Watts quite a bit describes, quieting one's mind and having silence and solitude and being still, through the practice of meditation or whatever it is you happen to be doing, as a means to go ahead and tap in to the core of yourself. Tap into who you are. And also, I will say, being alone, once again, does not necessarily have to mean that you're lonely. Tapping into who you are, right? And being able to find out, this is how I relate or interconnect with the rest of the world. And truth be told, what you happen to find a lot of times, once again, don't fall for the media bias or the fact that I'm going ahead and mentioning this of my own, that you should have preconceived notions or any sort of thing of like, oh, they're having this experience, so I need to have it for myself. But, a lot of times when it comes to being alone and people feeling lonely for whatever reason, they happen to go ahead and find and realize that, oh yes, I actually am able to comprehend and understand how we are all connected more so. But also, having silence and solitude and stillness allows us to go ahead and face our own demons quite a bit. Go ahead and face our traumas, face what worries us, what bothers us, those negative intrusive voices, and coming up and being present and addressing them and pretty much being like, alright, these sorts of thoughts and feelings arise. Why do they arise? And allowing us to have that introspection and reflection to where we can go ahead and work towards being able to make progress of potentially getting over them at some point, or, you could say integration or individuation, to use a particular psychological and, Jungian term right there. But yes, going ahead and facing the darker parts of us as well. I will say from my own personal testimony that there have been times where I have very much spent it alone, just based on how I was feeling of things not going well for myself. And also I would probably say that throughout the course of my life, based on the circumstances of it, that I have been allotted quite a bit of time to reflect and think, and time alone, be within my own space. And a lot of times I definitely prefer, to go ahead and do that quite a bit. And all that sort of thing. But, I will say that, of course, on the converse side of things, for most of us, we do need, some sort of social interaction to get us by, to get us going, at least for introverts, and of course for extroverts, that's going to be to a different sort of scale and amount, based on what your natural tendencies are, but still, finding an optimal balance between the two, whatever that may be, because nothing is polar in one way or the other, and nothing is completely static. Continual oscillation, but you may find your baseline a little bit more so leaning towards either solitude or, social interactions. And, talking about, I guess, like those who are more so leaning towards the solitude, pull, right? In terms of whatever that medium baseline, sort of thing is, I will say that, people living a more ascetic, and hermetic sort of lifestyle. Well, I guess hermetic in terms of the hermit itself. Now, granted, hermetic, and mentioning poles and all that, hermeticism, that's not necessarily what I'm alluding to. Granted, when it comes to hermeticism and hermetic principles and all that sort of thing, definitely a great subject to delve into, and a means of understanding the world quite a bit, and meshing in spirituality and science and all of that. But no, I'm leaning more so towards the archetype, and this is me getting to the point I actually want to convey, of the hermit. The tarot card in the major arcana of the tarot, the hermit card, I think, goes ahead and is what conveys this concept the best, right? In taking that time to assess, that taking that time to be alone and to reflect on things. And I happen to have here, it is an application I happen to use quite a bit for reading, from the Galaxy Tarot app. And in this right here, I have, keywords and a description for the Hermit Tarot card, and I definitely want to go ahead and recite it right now. Go ahead and share that, so, can add, more context if need be, and just approaching the same concept with, different angles and all that. Kind of going ahead and being like a broken record, maybe going ahead and sounding like I'm beating a dead horse, but I happen to do that quite a bit. I keep it simple, stupid, but I'm also understand that the repetition helps build those sorts of mental muscles. But yes, so keywords that are provided in, this description: solitude, introspection, perspective, wisdom, guidance. The hermit indicates a need or desire to withdraw from the world. He is a wise old man who has learned much about himself and his world through deep introspection and meditation. When you see this card in the reading, your soul may be craving a retreat in order to replenish and restore. By taking space in solitude now, you will be ready to engage with and guide others when they most need you later on. The answers you seek will be found within you, not in any book or on any website. Let me just take a moment to go to the next section. The hermit may also be advising you to seek the guidance of a wise counselor or mentor. And I happen to go ahead and take screenshots from the app itself, so it took a moment to change over pictures. But yeah, in any case, that in of itself, yes, the Hermit Tarot card definitely goes ahead and encompasses this concept quite a bit. And, to go ahead and kind of like, I guess, showcase so I think you guys, if you have heard me speak, on different topics and subjects before, I happen to think of like, musical sort of like correlations or attributions, often enough. And in regards to that, I want to mention the piece of music composed by composer John Cage last century in the 1900s called 433. And for those who are unaware of 433, it is a piece of music that the performer pretty much goes ahead and sits, at a piano or whatever instrument it may be. And truth be told, they go ahead and throughout the performance, they do not play any notes. It is in sitting there, allowing the natural sounds of the environment and what have you to go ahead and do as it does. Or pretty much, let the silence do talking. So the observation of silence in of itself being had and what one finds within that. Taking a moment of silence pretty much. And in me referring to it as a piece of music, right? That particular piece has been the subject of quite a bit of debate over the years since John Cage went ahead and published it, in that, is it truly music because there's no notes or any sort of actual playing of things? Is it not, is it not music? Is it just, you're sitting at a damn instrument or you're doing whatever and that's about it? It's nothing special and all of that, So pretty much it's like, what type of meaning do you ascribe to it in of itself in that sort of experience? Whether it's, yes, this is something where we can take time to truly observe, or just, no, forget that crap, you're just sitting there, it's not music, it's not art, all that sort of thing. And I think it's pretty safe to say, based on how I'm speaking about it, on which side of the fence I happen to go ahead and lean on. But of course, it's a debate that has been going on for a while, and I think that you should go ahead and check out the piece being performed on YouTube for yourself. And of course, people discussing the subject in of itself. I will provide a link to a performance of 433 in the description, as well as, the other ones that I mentioned beforehand, which, to remind myself, I think was the Swami Prabhupada talk on the goal of life being laziness, from Krishna.com, and also, the Koan's website as well. Now, when it comes to being still, having your solitude, and going ahead and enjoying silence, that in of itself is an avenue towards, gaining, you could say, quote unquote, enlightenment. But I don't really like using that terminology and all that sort of thing, because a lot of times it's kind of blown out of proportion by those who utilize it, and kind of like putting people up on a pedestal for going ahead and saying, someone's enlightened, or this, that, and the third, and all that. Kind of like similar to my sort of like perspective on people using the term woke. But in this sort of thing, it can lead one to insights, to a, enlightening of the mind, to reach the point of gnosis, right? And in gnosis, that is knowing. That is what the actual, that is the Greek Latinized term gnosis translates into, in English, knowing, And, that's where term Gnostic, not necessarily the Christian mystic, alternative Christian sort of philosophy and, sort of like you could say sect or religious grouping comes from. But the root of like someone being a Gnostic in knowing, or an agnostic, which is something you've probably more so heard and are more so familiar to. And the prefix of a, meaning without, so it means an agnostic is someone who is without knowing or doesn't know. But in allowing yourself the space to be silent, to sit still, to have solitude, to be alone, you can reflect and you can come to the knowing of yourself more so. And, and me having mentioned a couple more pieces of material where I or others have talked on, the channel, the Open Sorcery about the sort of thing. I believe in the release order there will be one that precedes this about both metanoia and gnosis, those two particular concepts that are rather related, and there will be further elaboration on that in that one. But yes, coming to a sense of knowing not only who you are as an individual, but coming to a place of knowing your place within the grander scheme of things and such. How we interconnect, and how we can go ahead and grow and evolve and become better, more experienced versions of ourselves and such. And truth be told, all in all, I think I've covered a lot, and most of it I wanted to cover. I guess I will go ahead and, for the last bit of this, I have, some quotes from the particular, self-help, sort of images and stuff and all that I think kind of interrelates to the topic that has been described. These I happened to collect a while back, and at least they were presented to me by, let me go see what it says right here. These sorts of things being like, by Awaken Your True Self or mindtranscended.com, and I think I had gotten them off of Facebook when I got them, like however many years ago. But yeah, pretty much right here, I want to go ahead and share these with you, to let you ponder on it and have some food for thought. So this one right here says, "Silence speaks 1,000 words." And, I'm sure you've heard the phrase of that, a picture speaks 1,000 words, but also silence does. And that, when you're visualizing something, or you're looking at something, or you allow that time for being alone and things being still and such, you can gain deeper meaning and insight from that, more so than actual a conversation or reading or listening to even me talk. And I'm gonna talk a bit more so about that at the end of all this for sure. And all that, let me go on to the next one. "It is always important to have something to bring into a relationship, and solitude is often the means by which you acquire it." And this one is stated by Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist who incorporated many spiritual sort of things into his delving into of psychology. And for those who are unaware of who Carl Jung is, incorporated things of alchemic nature, heavy on dream interpretation, including within the Red Book, his own personal journal, and considered kind of like his magnum opus of sorts, is something that he delves into quite a bit. But yes, go ahead and check out stuff by Carl Jung. I did mention, individuation before and how to incorporate the shadow self and all of that. But yes, Carl Jung is definitely a good, author and a good, person to delve into a bit more for, these sorts of concepts that I'm trying to convey, and all that. And this other one right here that I have, this is kind of like more so of a destination that one can definitely reach by allowing for silence and solitude and being alone and being still and pretty much getting to a point of appreciating the present and the now. Be happy for this moment. This moment is your life. And I believe that one was provided by Omar Khayyam. And yes. Now, in terms of, I guess, other, me pointing in the direction of other folks, I definitely recommend, I have right here, a couple of videos by Einzelganger on YouTube, where he talks about why silence is power, the priceless benefits of being silent, and then there's also how to transform yourself in solitude, useful ways to spend time alone. I definitely go ahead and recommend that you check out those videos. I believe I'll go ahead and include those in the description as well. And, to get the words of another individual as well. And more food for thought to munch on. And I believe the last couple things I do want to mention is, first and foremost, that something I had stated before, even though I'm talking about this, and actually this conversation, or this monologue I should say, this, talk has been going on for a bit, that, experience is going to be a better teacher in many regards, and with many different subjects, but particularly this one, than any of my words can actually say. So I'm occupying your eardrums with the sound of my voice, whether you like it or you think it sucks or it's like, irritating, or, maybe it's a pleasant voice. I don't know what your perspective is. Different strokes for different folks. But even though I am going ahead and speaking about the concept in of itself, experience in allowing yourself to have quiet around you, to enjoy that. That's going to be more so of a teacher and a beneficiary than any of my actual speaking on the subject can go ahead and be. And that is something I will personally attest to myself. Adding an addendum to the back end of this monologue that I had, I'm going to go ahead and provide a quote that was rather timely in coming across my path before going ahead and finishing up and posting this video right here. And it comes from Lao Tzu, the writer of the Tao Te Ching, the Tao Te Ching, which is included in that particular book. And it goes as follows. Those who know do not talk. Those who talk do not know. Stop talking. Meditate in silence. Blunt your sharpness. Release your worries. Harmonize your inner light and become one with the dust. And there you have it. And also, I think to round it all out, I guess another way to phrase it is that in a lot of cases, a lot of times, less is actually more. So, I think that pretty much goes ahead and covers it. And yes, guys, so I will go ahead and sign off for now. So, this is Twisted with the Opener Sorcery, and stay frosty, Neguses. Peace.